Got a question here asking, what if your tenant ghosts you? What if they just disappear off the face of the planet and you don't know what to do as a landlord? Hi, my name is Rob Wells. I'm the Landlord Boy on TikTok and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Now, I've had landlords come to me and they ask me, hey Rob, I've been trying to get a hold of my tenant for X amount of time and they're not returning phone calls and stuff. I've gone by the unit. It looks like the tenant has like ghosted me, like disappeared, right? What can I do as a landlord? Okay, well, there are kind of two options for this landlord here. Okay, the one option might be to issue a notice of belief of abandonment under Civil Code section 1951.3. Actually, hold on one sec, I think I had the wrong code section here. That's right, 1940 section 1951.3. Okay, I had the wrong code section up for a minute to quote this for the video here. That requires that a landlord have a reasonable belief that the tenant might have abandoned the property and rent hasn't been paid for at least 14 days. Okay, so what happens is when a landlord hasn't been paid for at least 14 consecutive days and they believe that the tenant might have abandoned the property, they can give a notice to the tenant and mail it to the residential address where the tenant resides at, the rental unit, and any other address that the landlord may be aware that the tenant may get the notice stating that and it's actually like a statutory form. The statutory form basically says, hey, I as the landlord believe that the property is abandoned, the rent has been not paid for 14 consecutive days. You have to formally notify me if you do not intend to abandon the property, basically, at the end of 18 days if you mail the notice to the tenant. Okay, the law actually allows you to personally deliver the notice to the tenant, but you can also mail it by first class mail, and that's usually the way we're handling it, is by mailing it first class mail to the tenant to any last known address and the rental address as well too, because the whole point is you're being ghosted. Okay, I think I've talked about on a number of different videos here that, to build up that reasonable belief of abandonment, it's recommended that the landlord go post a notice of entry, give at least 24 hours notice to see if the unit might appear to be vacant, for example, or in a condition where it would be reasonable to believe that it is abandoned. I tell landlords, look out for things like uncollected mail, other notices that you might have taped on the door, like being undisturbed. If you can see from outside the property, you go to the front door, right? You're taping, your 24-hour notice, and if you can peek inside the window, and if it looks like, hey, it might be abandoned, these are things, overgrown weeds, for example, things that would show that, like, hey, someone's not really living here type deal. You want to document that stuff, and I like to take pictures, take videos, that type of deal, of the condition of the property. So if there was ever a dispute, it's like, listen, I just didn't make this up. Like, there's like dust caked on the door, like this door hasn't been open in quite some time, that type of thing here. So that is one tool you can use if a tenant ghosts you. Obviously, you could issue a 3-day notice to pay rent and start an unlawful detainer and go through the unlawful detainer process to get that property back. In that type of case, you're probably going to have to do what we call a posting and a mailing order, which is, you're going to have to show a judge that you've diligently gone to the property and no one's responded, and gone, if like where the tenant works, you try to, serve the tenant, by substitute service or otherwise, and then you can't find them, get a posting order to effectuate the unlawful detainer service on that tenant. you might have to do that and get a court judgment for possession. That's probably the safest way of doing it if there was ever a dispute, about it. But a landlord is entitled to use the abandonment procedure under Civil Code Section 1951.3. I don't think I covered, the landlord's going to have to wait 18 days after mailing that notice to see if the tenant responds. I always like to document things too, like if you text message your tenant, just texting them, and if the texts are coming back as unsuccessful, or the number's been, you've logged in, calling your tenant and their number's been disconnected, you want to document that stuff. So that way, if it ever comes back, hey, landlord didn't have a reasonable belief. Well, no, actually I did, because I called the numbers here. They're disconnected. I got pictures of the property, dusty, and no one's been there, that type of deal. So, landlords, if you're facing a situation where your tenant might have ghosted you, might have abandoned the property, you're not sure how to handle it, and you're in the Northern California area, feel free to reach out to our website to book a free case review. We'll ask you a couple of questions to see if we're going to be a good fit or not, and then we'll have that case review session. Okay? Put your comments, questions down below. Until next time, folks, I'll talk to you then. Thanks.